King of the Ring used to be an incredibly important achievement in the WWE. It used to be the stamp of approval of who was going to be the next main event guy. Just look at people like Brock Lesnar and Stone Cold Steve Austin, who catapulted themselves into the main event scene after winning the King of the Ring. However, the King of the Ring has lost its power over the last several decades. Because over the past 20 years, the King of the Ring has truly meant nothing. It's not the star-making opportunity that it once was, and it doesn't even get you anything. It used to get you a world title opportunity, but not anymore. Instead, it gets you a crown and a gown, and then you go around calling yourself King Corbin, King Barrett, King Sheamus. But it seems like all of that is changing with the 2024 King and Queen of the Ring. It feels like the prestige of the King of the Ring is back. So today we're going to be talking all about the King of the Ring. I'm going to give you my predictions through this entire King of the Ring tournament, and ultimately I'm going to tell you who I think is going to win. We don't yet know the entire bracket for the Queen of the Ring side of things, so I'm going to save that for a different day. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, ring the bell for notifications. If you're a wrestling fan, I know that you're going to fall in love with this YouTube channel because we always upload daily wrestling content. And if you hurry over to the Patreon, we are still voting on this week's Wrestling is Cool Match Club. There are a ton of insane matches for you to vote on. We have things like Chelsea Green versus Penta, the NXT North American title match. We have Kota Ibushi taking on a doll. There's a lot for you to choose from. That's patreon.com/SantiZap. Okay, let's jump into the video. So folks, here's the current bracket of the King of the Ring as it stands as of the making of this video. If you look over on the Monday Night Raw side of the bracket, you can see that some of the matches have already happened, with the exception of Kofi Kingston versus Rey Mysterio, which is for some weird reason scheduled to happen at a live event instead of it actually happening on television. In my opinion, all of the King of the Ring and all of the Queen of the Ring matches should be on TV. But again, that's my opinion. However, just because some of these matches have already happened doesn't mean that we aren't going to talk about them. We're still going to go through this bracket match by match, even if the match has already happened, because even if the match has already happened, I can at the very least give you some insight as to whether I think the right person won or lost. So let's start off with the first match at the very top of the bracket between Sheamus and the ring general Gunther, and it's still weird to not call him the Intercontinental Champion Gunther. I feel like that the IC Championship was like part of his arm. It's kind of crazy that this was one of the opening matches for this tournament. I really feel like Gunther versus Sheamus could have been a match that they saved for later on in the tournament, maybe even the final of the Raw bracket, because so many of us have been wanting for a rematch between Sheamus and Gunther, and then they just gave it to us like that. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm happy to get these banger matches, but I really feel like they could have built up to this trilogy match. This match has already happened, and we already know that the winner is Gunther, who shockingly made Sheamus tap out. I cannot think of the last time that Sheamus tapped out in the middle of the ring. I really thought that Sheamus was just gonna pass out, or maybe somebody was gonna come in and throw in the towel, because the concept of Sheamus tapping out seems so foreign to me. But Gunther making Sheamus tap out really does elevate him and makes him feel scarier and stronger, even if he already is scary and strong. So even though we know the outcome of this, I will tell you that prior to the tournament, had this match not already happened, I would have picked Gunther as well. Not only would I have picked Gunther to win this match, but I would pick Gunther to go really deep into this tournament as well. Once again, I'll reiterate that my only complaint about this match is that I feel like it should have been deeper into the tournament. It shouldn't have been an opening match. Either way, I'm happy that it happened and Gunther ended up winning. Next up, we have the match that I mentioned isn't happening on TV between Kofi Kingston taking on Rey Mysterio. Rather than this happening on Monday Night Raw like how it was initially advertised to us, it's actually going to be happening at a live event, aka a house show, which is not televised. However, just because it's not televised, I'm sure it's going to be professionally recorded still by the WWE social media team, so I wouldn't be surprised if you see this match surface on the WWE Twitter page or YouTube page or any of their social media platforms. Maybe I just don't understand like the business concept behind it, but to me, this should 100% be televised. Kofi Kingston versus Rey Mysterio, are you kidding me? That's a banger of a match. I would pay to see that. Well, now I guess I'm starting to see the business side of things, because I would pay to see this live as well. So maybe that's the general idea, to try and get some ticket sales for these live shows. I don't know. One of the general problems with live shows is that for the most part, they're pretty predictable, even though they are incredibly fun. So adding something like this to a live show, so I guess could add to the drama and the experience of going to a live show, because this is a tough one to actually predict, in my opinion. Still, even though I'm talking myself into this actually not being a terrible idea for it to be on a house show, I still think that this should be televised. But I think in a more interconnected world that we live in, where social media is so integral in the part of just about everybody's lives, you can get away with having this match off of TV because the news of who wins will still spread like wildfire. I think that this is the toughest one to actually predict. I think you can make a great case for either guy, considering the winner is gonna go take on Gunther. So the winner here is gonna be that underdog babyface that takes on the favorite monster, Gunther. And both of these guys can play that role incredibly well. However, I do believe that Kofi Kingston is better suited to take on Gunther at this point in the tournament. So don't be surprised if Rey Mysterio loses because of shenanigans with his son, or maybe Carlito at the house show, who the hell knows. But I do believe that Kofi Kingston is going to win this to try and help avenge his brother in Xavier Woods, who is the reigning defending King of the Ring, who was destroyed and taken out by Gunther in a couple weeks ago. So that's my prediction. I'm taking Kofi Kingston to beat Rey Mysterio to go on to face Gunther. This match also happened on Raw, and it was one hell of a 5-star match. We had Ricochet taking on Ilya Dragunov, who is just called up from the NXT roster to the main roster. And this to me was fantastic. What an incredible match. Ricochet looked like a gazillion bucks. Ilya Dragunov looked like a gazillion bucks. I was on the edge of my seat. It was a combination of high flying, hard hitting. Like, dude, this match was everything. It was perfect. It's gotta be at the very least in contention for the best free match of the entire year. It's gotta be in the conversation for sure. This match reminded everyone that Ricochet is absolutely incredible, and it introduced to the main roster fans Ilya Dragunov, who, if you watch NXT, you knew he was amazing, but you know, the more casual main roster fans don't know who he is yet. So this was a really great introduction for Ilya Dragunov to the wider WWE universe. Ultimately, Ilya Dragunov won, and I do think that that was the right choice. I have a feeling that they're trying to tease us with the possibility of Ilya Dragunov versus Gunther happening in the final of the Raw bracket, but I don't know if we're gonna get that just yet. But it's definitely the dangling carrot that they've got for the hardcore fans, because if you know what Walter and Ilya Dragunov have done in the past, you know that they could put on a match of the century contender. So even though Ilya Dragunov won, before the show even started, this is who I would have picked. I think it's the right choice, and I think it's a great way to, again, cement Ilya Dragunov as an important player post-draft. This was a funky situation. So it was originally advertised that it was going to be Drew McIntyre taking on Finn Balor in the first round of the King of the Ring tournament. However, it was announced that Drew McIntyre was not medically cleared, that his arm is still messed up, so he wasn't able to compete. So at the start of Monday Night Raw, it was revealed that it was going to be main event Jey Uso taking on Finn Balor in the first round, as opposed to Finn Balor getting that first round bye that he originally thought he was going to get. This is a tough situation, man, because I do think that Finn Balor would have been a great person to move on to the next round to take on Ilya Dragunov, but the second that they inserted Jey Uso into this tournament, I knew that he was gonna win, at the very least win the match against Finn Balor, because Jey Uso is the top babyface on Raw, #1 draft pick, and had a hell of a weekend in terms of course, his presentation at Backlash, but also the whole Jey Uso chanting thing going a bit more mainstream as well. So there was no chance in hell that Finn Balor was gonna win this, and I think that that's a shame. I feel like Finn Balor could have really made a stamp and really gone deep in this tournament. I personally believe that it should have been Drew McIntyre to move on to the next round, but if not Drew McIntyre, then it should have been Finn Balor, but ultimately we got Jey Uso, and I think Jey Uso is going to go deep in this. However, don't be surprised if the Judgment Day gets involved in future Jey Uso matches to stop him from becoming King of the Ring, because I don't think that Jey Uso versus Damian Priest is over just yet. Fellas, let me talk to you. If there's a surefire way to wake up feeling fresh after a night of drinking, it's with Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was actually invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. For me, every time I have a Z-Biotics before drinks, I notice that the next day I'm actually feeling fresh. And it's because I'm feeling fresh that I'm able to still do the things that I love to the fullest even after a night of drinking. For example, going to the gym and exercising and making those gains. At least for me personally, a night of drinking makes for an easy excuse to miss a day at the gym since I'm not feeling the best in the morning. But with Z-Biotics, I feel fresh the next day, so I have no excuse but to keep going to the gym and grinding. Because fellas, those gains don't make themselves. So go to zbiotics.com/Santi to get 15% off your first order when you use Santi at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guaranteed, so if you're unsatisfied for any reasons, they'll refund you your money, no questions asked. So remember to head to zbiotics.com/Santi and use code Santi at checkout for 15% off. Thank you to Z-Biotics for sponsoring this episode and our good times. Back to the video. If we hop over to the SmackDown side of things, the first match is going to be Randy Orton versus AJ Styles, which is just a mind-blowing match to have in round one. It's kind of like how we got Sheamus versus Gunther. This match could have easily been the final of the SmackDown bracket, but here we are. It's opening. And I think a lot of what's going to dictate how the SmackDown bracket goes is going to be the involvement of the Bloodline. Will Bloodline get involved in matches? Will Tonga and Tonga Loa get involved? Who the hell knows? This is kind of a tough one to predict. Randy Orton is a top superstar on SmackDown. However, AJ Styles is as hot as he's been in a very long time after his absolutely phenomenal performance in France. I'm not entirely sure what the plan is with AJ Styles. They haven't obviously hinted at anything just yet, but I would love for him to run things back with Cody Rhodes at this very show, King and Queen of the Ring. So, because I do think that AJ Styles has a better, easier path to the main event at this very show, because we know that Cody's gonna be on it, he's on the poster, I think it'd be really easy to just run AJ Styles, Cody Rhodes again. So because of that, I'm actually gonna take Randy Orton to move on here. The next matchup that we have is a matchup between NXT call-ups and Baron Corbin and Carmelo Hayes. These guys have already had a couple of wars in NXT in some really, really fun matches. However, I don't see Carmelo Hayes losing here. They're clearly setting up Carmelo Hayes to be the future of Friday Night SmackDown. He is a future world champion, and I think that Baron Corbin is a great first matchup in this tournament for Carmelo Hayes because I think that Baron Corbin could make Carmelo Hayes look fantastic. I hope it's a very competitive match. I hope that Carmelo Hayes doesn't just steamroll through Baron Corbin because Baron Corbin has done such a great job of rejuvenating his career down in NXT. So I still want to see him be competitive in the main roster, but I gotta take Carmelo Hayes here. The next matchup at the bottom of the SmackDown bracket is LA Knight taking on Santos Escobar, a match that they actually already alluded to when both of these men announced that they were going to be part of the King of the Ring. So I'm not surprised that they are the first round matchup. To me, this is a runaway. You're gonna go with LA Knight. If you're gonna make any bets on this, if you've got money on the line, I think smart money says you gotta go with LA Knight on this one. I don't see Santos Escobar going very deep. When I look at the rest of the bracket, there's no feud matches that we can connect for Santos Escobar to warrant and justify him going deeper in this tournament, but I can do that with LA Knight. And at the bottom of the SmackDown bracket, we have a very random ass match between Bobby Lashley and Tama Tonga. I am shocked that Tama Tonga is in this tournament. Frankly, I'm shocked that any member of the Bloodline is in this tournament, but we're gonna run with it. When I look at the numbers game on SmackDown, I think it's an inevitability that at some point or another, we're gonna get this Bloodline 2.0 versus the Pride. We've already lost a couple of the factions from SmackDown that went over to Raw, like Damage Control and of course the LWO. So that opens up some room for these factions to have new feuds with one another. And I would personally really like to see the Pride versus the Bloodline. So I do think that the Bloodline is going to get involved here, whether it's Tonga Loa, Solo Sikoa. I don't think Jacob Fatu is appearing anytime soon, but I do foresee the Bloodline getting involved here and getting Tonga the victory over Bobby Lashley. We're back on the Raw side of the bracket, and now we're looking at the semifinal of Raw between Gunther and Kofi Kingston. If you are picking anyone aside from Gunther here, you're just entirely incorrect here. I still think that it's going to be a nice grudge match. I think it could be a match that could main event the Raw that it happens on. I think it could run for 20 plus minutes, but Gunther is winning this. Sadly, the New Day is a casualty of the Gunther push because they are pushing Gunther to the moon, and they need to do it in a really dominant way after he lost his Intercontinental Championship, and I think that him steamrolling through the New Day members is going to be part of the way that they do it. So I gotta take Gunther here. And fellas, just like that, we are inches away from finally getting Ilya Dragunov versus Gunther, but I don't think that that's going to be the case just yet. I think that this is going to be Ilya's version of Carmelo versus Cody Rhodes, where Ilya Dragunov is going to take Jey Uso to the limit, but still main event Jey Uso, who is, once again, let me reiterate, the top babyface on all of Monday Night Raw, is going to win this. They are not going to give us Dragunov versus Gunther just yet. On top of that, don't forget that Gunther and Jey Uso still have unfinished business from the Intercontinental Championship match that Jimmy Uso got involved in during the lead up to WrestleMania 40. So Jey Uso is actually one of those people that Gunther hasn't been able to like easily and cleanly beat. And I just don't think that a random episode of Monday Night Raw is the place to finally do Walter versus Ilya Dragunov part 3. Let's face it, like they have the perfect venue. They're gonna do this in late August, and that gives the WWE plenty of time to catapult Gunther to the very top of the main event scene with a World Heavyweight Championship, and it gives the WWE time to slowly build up Ilya Dragunov as a legitimate main event threat. And as much as I love Ilya Dragunov, as much as I want to continue to see him go through this tournament, it's not the right time yet. It's gonna be Jey Uso. What a crazy stretch of 4 weeks this would be for Carmelo Hayes. Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton in the span of a month would be a fantastic start to his main roster run. Carmelo Hayes is also being given the arrogant youngster gimmick. We saw it with Bobby Lashley, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it with Randy Orton here, but I do think that it's going to be experience that ultimately gets Randy Orton the victory here. I think Randy Orton is going to move on, but I also think that Carmelo Hayes is going to look like $1 million here. And this is what I mean by LA Knight actually having some narrative threads if you keep moving him along this tournament, because this would reunite LA Knight with the Bloodline once again, which is cathartic because the last time that they truly feuded with one another was at a Saudi show. I'm not sure how they're gonna do it. I'm not gonna sure how the involvement is gonna happen, but once again, I'm sure that the Bloodline is gonna get involved. However, I think that Kevin Owens and Randy Orton are gonna come out and even the odds to help LA Knight actually pick up the victory here. I just don't see Tama Tonga going this deep into the tournament when he already has so many other things going. I don't think that King of the Ring is something that he needs on his resume. LA Knight, on the other hand, could really benefit from going deep into this tournament and having another match in Saudi Arabia, a country that has already demonstrated loves LA Knight. So out of these two, I'm taking LA Knight here. Now let's look at the semi-final of the King of the Ring and the final of the Raw bracket between Gunther, the Ring General, taking on main event Jey Uso. I think it's gonna be Groundhog Day for Jey Uso, where he has Gunther on the ropes about to beat him, but we're gonna have involvement, most likely beat by the Judgment Day, that prevents him from actually picking up the victory. Something that you need to remember is that we have a WWE Premium Live event literally 2 weeks after King and Queen of the Ring. So if we have involvement from the Judgment Day to stop Jey Uso from winning, you can set up the World Heavyweight Championship rematch between Jey Uso and Damian Priest, which will take place in just 2 weeks at Clash at the Castle. But I think that this is Gunther's destiny. The way that they've been setting up this tournament, it's his to lose. He is winning here, but it's not going to be clean. They are going to do everything in their power to protect Jey Uso as their #1 asset on Monday Night Raw, but also to protect him for that inevitable feud and match at the PLE 2 weeks after the King of the Ring between him and Damian Priest. So folks, I've got Gunther running it right through to the final and making it to Saudi Arabia for the final of King of the Ring. And this is a fun one. Randy Orton versus LA Knight, two guys that still have unfinished business with one another, dating all the way back to the Royal Rumble earlier this year. I really like this path for LA Knight in King of the Ring because every single matchup is a feud that he's either about to start or a feud that's a callback to something that he's already done in the past. On paper, I wouldn't know how to actually tell you how, but I think LA Knight is winning. I think that obviously Randy Orton is the bigger star, but LA Knight is beloved in Saudi Arabia. You just got to go back and watch Crown Jewel, the reaction that he was getting in the match, the reaction he was getting during his entrance, the reaction he was getting during press conference. Like, they love LA Knight over there. So I think that this is the WWE's way of getting LA Knight back to Saudi Arabia. I think that he's gonna be winning the SmackDown bracket and beating Randy Orton here. I think that safe money is Randy Orton, but I really like the idea of LA Knight back in Saudi Arabia, so I'm taking LA Knight to face Gunther in the final. I will say, if you're trying to cement Gunther as like the next top monster heel of Monday Night Raw and all of the WWE, I do think that a finals victory against Randy Orton is actually probably the better way to actually do it. However, again, if you're trying to create a rowdy environment in Saudi Arabia, I think the best way to do it is with LA Knight. Plus, Randy Orton doesn't need the King of the Ring. These are two guys that are still building their resume in the WWE, and both of these guys would benefit tremendously from winning the King of the Ring or being in a PLE for the final for it. Because you can find a PLE spot for Randy Orton, probably running it back against the Bloodline, no problem. However, LA Knight's path to this PLE is only here. This is the only way that he gets on this show. So this is the final that I'm going with. Gunther versus LA Knight, and I'm sorry, but I am going with Gunther. I think that this is his destiny. I think that this is the setup and the catapult to send him to the main event, and I think that this is how we rebuild the importance and the prestige of the King of the Ring by once again using it not just to give him a king gimmick, because Gunther's not going to come out with a crown, a scepter, and a king's robe. He's not going to do any of that crap. Instead, he's going to take the moniker of go from general to king and kick ass and win championships. All right, folks, that's my prediction for this year's King of the Ring. Once again, we are going to do the Queen of the Ring as well, just later on this week when they reveal the bracket. But folks, I'm done. Get out of here.